The sunlight shone through the dense branches of the trees, forming beams of light. Within the beams, tiny specks of light danced, making the entire courtyard feel incredibly clear and transparent. Chen sat cross-legged on a stone bench, one hand supporting his face and the other playing with a rough, dark jade slip. He had ultimately chosen the great pagoda art, fulfilling the promise he made to his father. However, even Mu Feng wasn't entirely sure of the rank of the great pagoda art. He only vaguely mentioned that it seemed extraordinarily powerful. As for why it was so powerful, his reasoning was simply, because your mother is incredibly powerful. Your mother is incredibly powerful? Chen blinked. Mu Feng had managed to rise from nothing to build the vast Mu domain in the northern spiritual realm, becoming a well-known powerhouse. If even he described someone as incredibly powerful, how strong could that mother of his have been? If she's so powerful, how did she end up with old dad? Chen grinned. Back when his father was young, he and his mother must have had a beautiful encounter as well. That should be a pretty good story. Chen calmed his chaotic thoughts and turned his attention back to the dark jade slip in his hand. 10 days from now, he would face off against Liu Yang. That guy was also at the early stage of the spirit movement stage and possessed a mortal-grade spiritual vein. Although Chen had encountered individuals with stronger spiritual veins than Liu Yang's in the Spirit Road, the Spirit Road itself was a peculiar place. The so-called Spirit Road was essentially an enormous trial ground created by the 5 great academies. Every 3 years, it opened, and the selection process for who could enter was quite unusual. It wasn't a human choice, but was determined by a divine artifact called the Mirror of Judgment. The way it selected candidates was strange, but those chosen by this artifact were typically individuals with exceptional talent. Generally, anyone who could successfully navigate the trials in the Spirit Road would gain entry to the 5 great academies to continue their cultivation. The Spirit Road was formed from a particular dimension where no one could use any energy. That meant, inside the Spirit Road, no spiritual energy, do qi, or primordial energy from other dimensions could be used. Those selected to enter the Spirit Road would face all sorts of life-threatening dangers and brutal trials. With no spiritual energy to rely on, they would have to rely solely on their strength, agility, and wisdom to survive. This way of forcing individuals into life-or-death situations was undoubtedly an excellent method for tempering one's willpower. Upon entering the Spirit Road, those selected were told that to pursue supreme power, they must possess an unshakable will, for only by mastering this will could one become a true powerhouse. Over the course of countless years, the majority of the top-tier powerhouses who came from the 5 great academies had once participated in the trials of the Spirit Road. This just goes to show how crucial the trials were, which was why so many geniuses sought after it. The 5 great academies. Chen's hand clenched slightly. That place, he had to go there. Not only to keep the promise he made to her, but also because only by emerging from one of the 5 great academies could he truly stand on his own in the outside world. Chen didn't know much about the outside world, but occasionally, he learned bits and pieces from Mu Feng. The vast great 1,000 worlds they inhabited contained countless races, with the northern spiritual realm being as insignificant as a grain of sand in the ocean. The great 1,000 worlds connected to innumerable other dimensions, though those dimensions were considered lower dimensions, because the worlds within the great 1,000 worlds were thought to be of a higher tier. This great 1,000 world was the very center of those countless dimensions. However, even though those dimensions were called lower, anyone who could travel from one of them to the great 1,000 world possessed extraordinary talent. They were the top powerhouses of their respective dimensions, for without such ability, they could never break through the barriers of their realms. Chen once overheard some information about those great people from lower dimensions during a high-level meeting. The most famous among them were 2 individuals, whose names Chen didn't know, but he had heard of their titles. Flame Emperor. A very imposing title. Although they come from a lower dimension, based on Chen's guess, even in the great 1,000 worlds, they would still be considered true supreme beings. The Martial Ancestor, for example, once stirred up a massive uproar in the great 1,000 worlds. It is said that he single-handedly charged into the Ice Spirit clan, one of the towering forces in the great 1,000 worlds. Despite the Ice Spirit clan summoning all their strength, they were unable to stop the man wielding a thunder staff. That battle shook the heavens and the earth, and the event reverberated throughout the world. It is said that such an earth-shattering act was done solely to rescue the person he loved. The Flame Emperor, on the other hand, is relatively low-key. However, rumors say he once visited the Fire Spirit clan, where they called upon their ancient ancestor who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Yet, even he could not gain the upper hand against the Flame Emperor, who left with an elegant, carefree air. This left the entire Fire Spirit clan stunned and speechless. These supreme beings from the lower dimension, even when they arrived in the Great Thousand Worlds, still maintained their charisma and imposing aura. The world outside is where true excitement lies, where every corner is filled with dazzling wonders that stir the soul. However, Chen also understands that he is not yet at that level. But he believes that, given enough time, he will certainly reach it. Chen gazed at the dark jade slip in his hands, a smile rising on his youthful face. Well then, let's begin with this. He brought his hands together gently and closed his eyes. The dark jade slip in his palm emitted a faint warm glow. As the world around him turned dark, Chen focused his mind and guided the spiritual energy within him through his arm's meridians, finally channeling it into the jade slip. Buzz. As the spiritual energy flowed in, the jade slip emitted a subtle buzzing sound. The darkness began to tear apart, as if something was entering Chen's body through his palm. Transform the body into a pagoda and prove the Tao of the spirit. The mysterious and obscure mantra, like the ancient tolling of a bell, quietly echoed in Chen's mind. He quickly focused and committed the cultivation formula to memory. The bell's ringing gradually faded. The mantra contained so much that Chen could not fully comprehend, so he wisely chose to only absorb what he could understand and bear. Even then, the mantra's complexity still caused his head to throb. He had never encountered such a profound and intricate formula before. However, Chen clearly possessed extraordinary talent. After all, he had earned the qualification for the Spirit Road trials. Immersed in the mysteries of the mantra, he began to grasp its nuances. After a long while, he finally began to guide his spiritual energy along the meridian pathways outlined in the formula. These pathways were quite unusual. If one were to follow them precisely, they would find that they formed a strange tower shape within his body. The spiritual energy flowed quietly through these bizarre meridian pathways. This first attempt was clearly extremely draining, but Chen endured the fatigue and kept the energy circulating properly. These odd meridian pathways were extremely difficult to control. Despite his best efforts, Chen failed repeatedly. However, he remained calm and focused, maintaining a peaceful state of mind as he persevered. This process continued for the entire afternoon. After countless failures, one last stream of spiritual energy finally broke through the final meridian pathway under Chen's careful control. Once the spiritual energy emerged from the final pathway, it began to change. The originally clear energy started to darken, taking on a deep black hue, emanating an air of profoundness. At this point, the energy could finally be called true spiritual power. Though the dark spiritual energy seemed calm and restrained, Chen could faintly sense a chilling and domineering aura hidden beneath the surface. Clearly, the spiritual energy cultivated from the great pagoda art was of extraordinary quality, far surpassing that of ordinary spiritual formulas. The things left behind by his mother were truly remarkable. Chen, drenched in sweat, secretly thought, feeling a sense of excitement. This dark spiritual energy was absorbed into his chi-si, where it quietly settled, awaiting the day when, through continued cultivation, it would grow ever more powerful. At the moment the dark spiritual energy settled in his chi-si, Chen's body suddenly shook violently. A wave of dizziness hit his mind, and faintly, it felt as though something deep within his body resonated, creating a strange sensation that quickly faded. What's happening? Chen quickly snapped back to his senses, filled with uncertainty. He hurriedly checked his body but found nothing wrong. The earlier sensation felt like an illusion. However, Chen, with his firm mind, didn't believe it was just an illusion. Is it because of the great pagoda art? Mu Chen's thoughts raced. He focused on the dark spiritual energy in his qi, thinking deeply for a long time but found no clue. The great pagoda art was a gift from his mother, and though he had never met her, he firmly believed she would never leave him something harmful. Or could it be this? Mu Chen suddenly felt a shift in his mind. Deep in his qi, a flash of black light appeared and hovered above the dark spiritual energy. The black light faded, revealing a thin piece of black paper. There were no markings on it, but faint, strange patterns could be seen, blurred and almost indistinct. The black paper hovered quietly in the qi, nurtured by the dark spiritual energy. It exuded an ancient, mysterious aura. Mu Chen stared at the mysterious black paper, lost in thought. He had obtained it during his journey through the spirit path. Since then, it had never shown any clear use. But Mu Chen felt it wasn't an ordinary object. He simply lacked the strength to uncover its secrets. Could the earlier resonance have been because of this? Mu Chen thought for a moment, but slowly shook his head. Although the black paper was mysterious, the earlier disturbances clearly weren't caused by it. After much thought, Mu Chen gave up. He focused back on the dark spiritual energy in his qi. According to the Great Pagoda art, it had 3 stages: foundation establishment, form condensation, and pagoda transformation. But Mu Chen had barely entered the first stage, foundation establishment, and it would take much effort to reach it. In the courtyard, Mu Chen slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the sweat covering his body, he couldn't help but shake his head. The Great Pagoda art was indeed difficult to cultivate. He had barely started, yet it was already this hard. He couldn't imagine how tough it would be to reach the pagoda transformation stage. I wonder how many layers of amplification this Great Pagoda art's spiritual energy can reach? Mu Chen's curiosity sparked. Spiritual techniques had another important function. They could amplify spiritual energy. Generally, mortal-grade upper techniques could amplify spiritual energy by 5 layers, while spiritual-grade lower techniques could do so by 10 layers. The deeper the amplification, the more powerful the energy burst would be. This was also a common way to roughly gauge the grade of a spiritual technique. Mu Chen's curiosity deepened. He spun his palm, and a stream of black, spiritual energy appeared in his hand. Slowly, he clenched his fist, his gaze growing intense. He was eager to test how powerful the Great Pagoda art could be. In the courtyard, Mu Chen stood tall. His palm slightly curved. A trace of dark spiritual energy quickly gathered in his palm, radiating a sharp wave of energy. Feeling the energy in his palm, Mu Chen sensed the subtle changes. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. The once gentle dark spiritual energy in his hand began to tremble violently. It was like water droplets falling into boiling oil. As the trembling continued, the energy's fluctuations rapidly grew stronger. Mu Chen's hand trembled slightly. He could feel the spiritual energy amplifying quickly. 1 layer, 3 layers, 5 layers, 8 layers. When the energy amplification reached the 9th layer, his palm shook violently, and the energy seemed on the verge of breaking free from his control. Mu Chen furrowed his brows slightly. His slightly curved palm suddenly clenched, and in that moment, a faint muffled sound seemed to resonate. The wild, untamed spiritual energy surged once more. 13th level. A veil of dark spiritual energy enveloped Mu Chen's hand. His gaze turned solemn. In the next instant, his palm trembled sharply, and his fingers curved together, thrusting forward like a bolt of lightning towards the stone pillar before him. A piercing sound cut through the air. Mortal middle-grade offensive spirit art. Bone-shattering finger. Boom. Mu Chen's 2 fingers plunged deep into the stone pillar. Cracks spread outward from the point of impact like a web of fractures. Staring at the spreading cracks, Mu Chen slowly withdrew his fingers and murmured, 13th level. He nodded in satisfaction. He had only just begun practicing the Great Pagoda art, yet even at this intra-level stage, it had already allowed his spiritual energy to reach a 13-fold amplification. This alone proved how formidable the Great Pagoda art truly was. Mu Chen could sense that as he became more proficient, this amplification would only continue to grow. This great pagoda art is at least a spirit upper-grade spirit art. Chen grinned. The things his mother left behind were certainly extraordinary. A spirit upper-grade spirit art was an extremely rare treasure in the northern spirit realm. However, training in this art was incredibly arduous. Even with his strong confidence in his cultivation talent, he still found the process exceptionally difficult. But time, that's something I have plenty of, Chen muttered to himself. Clapping the dust off his hands, he turned and walked back to his room. Over the next few days, he would have to dedicate himself fully to mastering the great pagoda art. Not far from the courtyard, Mu Feng had been observing the events unfolding. A pleased smile crept onto his face as he mused, "Little Mu's talent is indeed extraordinary. I once trained in the great pagoda art as well, but it took me a full 5 days just to cultivate my first trace of spiritual energy. Even then, the initial amplification barely reached 7-fold. But this boy, he's managed to refine his spiritual energy in just half a day, and the amplification has already reached such a staggering level. He's really putting me to shame." Though he spoke in a somewhat self-deprecating tone, the pride and joy in Mu Feng's eyes were unmistakable. "Haha, little Mu's talent is truly remarkable. I suspect that in the future, his achievements will far surpass anything we old folks could ever hope for." Beside him, Zhou Yi chuckled, nodding in admiration. His voice carried a deep sense of sentimentality. "Indeed, to us, the northern spirit realm feels vast. But for little Mu, it's far too small." In the following days, Mu Chen devoted all his energy to training in the great pagoda art. Though he often appeared laid back on the surface, deep down, he possessed an unwavering determination that left a lasting impression on others. It was this very resilience that allowed him to make a name for himself in the Spirit Road, a place filled with monstrous geniuses. And in the end, it was this same spirit that led him to shake the world with an earth-shattering event that left countless prodigies utterly dumbfounded. Under Mu Chen's relentless training, his qi rapidly condensed, growing richer with spiritual energy. His understanding of the great pagoda art deepened further. However, despite his progress, he still felt that he was some distance away from breaking into the foundation establishment stage. The difficulty of this great pagoda art was truly astonishing. After gradually settling into the rhythm of his training, Mu Chen allowed himself a slight reprieve. He then diverted some of his focus towards selecting a few offensive spirit arts from the secret chamber, ones that best suited him. Though he had built a solid foundation in spiritual energy, combat prowess required offensive techniques to truly shine. What's more, Liu Yang was no ordinary opponent. As the top-ranked cultivator of the Earth class, his strength spoke for itself. Furthermore, his father was none other than the domain lord of the Liu domain, the most powerful territory in the northern spirit realm. The Liu domain was even slightly superior to the Mu domain, and over the years, the two had been engaged in frequent conflicts, sharing a long-standing rivalry. While the Liu domain couldn't extend its influence too far, they would undoubtedly provide Liu Yang with the strongest support possible. But did that mean Mu Chen would simply allow himself to be trampled upon? Even within the Spirit Road, where countless monstrous geniuses roamed, none had been able to suppress him. Could a mere Liu Yang accomplish what they could not? In a vast training field lined with stone pillars, a figure shot forward, kicking up a thin layer of dust. Dark spiritual energy coiled around his palms, emanating a sharp and lethal aura. He curled his 2 fingers, wrapped in dark spiritual energy, resembling a sharp black spike, and slammed them down onto a stone pillar. Crack! Shards of stone flew everywhere, and cracks rapidly spread across the pillar. A cold glint flashed in the young man's pitch-black eyes. His fingers, deeply embedded in the stone pillar, suddenly shook, and with a dull thud, the stone pillar, about the size of a man's waist, was pierced through completely. One stone pillar shattered, but the young man didn't stop. Changing his fingers into a palm, dark spiritual energy surged, accompanied by the faint sound of thunder, and he slapped his hand onto another stone pillar. Whoosh! As his palm struck the stone pillar, the young man stood on one leg, and with a whip-like kick, he sent his other leg crashing into another stone pillar. Boom! Bang! Two muffled sounds echoed, and the two stone pillars exploded into pieces. As shards of stone scattered, the young man slowly retracted his leg, calmed his breath, and the dark spiritual energy in his palms quietly dissipated. Clap, clap. Applause sounded from the side. Mu Chen turned to see Mu Feng standing outside the training ground with a smile, clearly very satisfied with Mu Chen's performance. The strikes were like a torrential storm, sharp with a hidden murderous edge, not at all inferior to his own subordinates, who had been honed through life and death battles. It seemed that his son's year in the spirit road had not been wasted. Father, Mu Chen dusted off his arm and walked towards Mu Feng. You'll be heading back tomorrow, right? Mu Feng asked with a smile. Mu Chen nodded. If you can pass this competition, you should be able to advance to the heavenly class. Only then will you be qualified to compete for a spot in the 5 great academies. Mu Feng patted Mu Chen's shoulder, smiling. A spot in the 5 great academies, huh? Mu Chen stretched lazily, a smile appearing on his slender face. Don't worry, father, that spot is as good as mine. Biling City, a city that was born from here, and like any other, maintained absolute neutrality within the northern spiritual realm. Its ruler, unsurprisingly, followed the same principle. Because the disputes in the northern spiritual realm would not spread here, the prosperity of Biling City, compared to other major cities in the realm, stood out as one of the most influential centers. Biling City, by virtue of its creation, was naturally considered a haven for students. In this city, few would dare provoke the students. Their status alone spoke volumes. After all, most of the students who came to practice here had some sort of background, many even being heirs of various domains. Offending these well-connected youths was hardly a pleasant prospect. When Mu Chen stepped out of the teleportation spirit array, he immediately saw the bustling city scene. He rubbed his head, which was slightly dizzy from the teleportation, then turned back to look at the array behind him. Setting up such teleportation arrays was a complex task, and only a handful of major cities within the northern spiritual realm had the ability to construct them. Clearly, his current location was one of those places with such power. Mu Chen walked down from the bustling teleportation array, and with practiced ease, he moved through the lively streets, heading straight towards the center of the city. On either side of the streets were many shops, some selling various spiritual arts, with vendors shouting out their wares. However, Mu Chen did not stop. His father was one of the 9 domain lords in the northern spiritual realm, and his collection of spiritual arts would naturally not be inferior. Therefore, the spiritual arts sold in this area didn't catch Mu Chen's attention. After turning several streets, the grand structure in the distance became clearer. The streets were filled with groups of students, both young men and women, laughing and chatting, full of youthful energy. From time to time, glances were cast at Mu Chen, and some of the more delicate girls' gazes were filled with curiosity and shyness. Among them, Mu Chen was clearly a well-known figure. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that he had obtained a spot in the Spirit Road was enough to make people's hearts stir. After all, there was only one spot for the entire northern spiritual realm. Although no one knew why Mu Chen had been expelled from the Spirit Road after only a year, one thing was clear. A person who could earn a spot in the Spirit Road was far from ordinary. As for the glances cast his way, Mu Chen paid them little mind, even returning a smile. His youthful appearance was charming, and his smile was warm and radiant. It was the scent, combined with that pleasing face, which made the young girls secretly stealing glances at him feel their cheeks heat up. Suddenly, some commotion arose in the street ahead. The students quickly scattered, and then a few figures, their faces covered in dust, ran out. They looked around anxiously, and after a moment, their eyes lit up with surprise. Mu Ge! Several voices shouted in delight. Luodong, what are you all doing? Mu Chen asked, slightly surprised as he recognized the familiar faces. They were in the same training class, and their relationship was generally quite good. Mu Gu, hurry and help Su Ling. He's been beaten by Mu Yuan. Luodong, the boy, said urgently. Mu Yuan? The students around them were startled by the name. Mu Yuan, ranked second in the Earth class? He was a fierce guy, only slightly weaker than Lu Yang. How could Su Ling have provoked him? What happened? Mu Chen furrowed his brows. Su Ling was one of his closest friends. Earlier, Mu Yuan arrogantly declared that you would definitely lose miserably tomorrow. Su Ling couldn't stand it and argued back, and then Mu Yuan beat him up. The Western Academy is really too arrogant. Luo Dong gritted his teeth. Mu Chen's lips tightened slightly. Luo Dong's heart skipped a beat when he saw this, as he knew Mu Chen well enough to understand that this gesture usually meant he was angry. "Take me there," Mu Chen said. "Huh." Luo Dong and the others were stunned for a moment, then said, "Mu Gu, let's find a teacher first." There are a lot of people on Mu Yuan's side, including Shuedong, whom you defeated earlier, and Xiao Kuan, who's ranked 6th in the Earth class. "It's fine, lead the way," Mu Chen smiled, gently patting Luo Dong's shoulder. Seeing Mu Chen smile, Luo Dong and the others exchanged glances, then gritted their teeth and nodded. At worst, they would get beaten up, but they couldn't let the Western Academy think that the Eastern Academy was made up of weaklings. The group quickly surrounded Mu Chen and left, leaving behind a few students on the street who were momentarily stunned. However, they quickly snapped out of it, their eyes filled with excitement as they watched Mu Chen's group head off, and soon followed in pursuit. From Mu Chen's earlier expression, could it be that he was about to challenge the top 3 fierce figures from the Western Academy in the Earth class all by himself? This was going to be a massive event. Boom! A dull sound rang out, and a figure was sent flying backward in a disheveled manner, leaving a long trail on the ground before coming to a stop. Seems like the Eastern Academy is a bit too full of confidence these days. Even some unknown guy dares to shout in front of me, Mu Yuan. "I really wonder who gave you all the confidence," a young man in black sneered, his arms crossed as he looked at the group of students sprawled on the ground. At the head was Su Ling, who was glaring at him through gritted teeth. Behind the young man in black stood 2 other boys of similar age, both with mocking smiles, their eyes filled with undisguised arrogance. A large circle of students had gathered around them, but no one dared to speak. In the Earth class, few people would be bold enough to provoke the top 3 figures standing here. Spit. Mu Yuan, don't get too smug. Today, Mu Ji's not here, or your second rank in the Earth class would be gone. Su Ling spat, his voice filled with anger. Mu Chen? Mu Yuan raised an eyebrow, and one of the boys behind him snorted coldly. It was Shuedong, who had been defeated by Mu Chen. "That guy does have some skill, but I'm not afraid of him," Mu Yuan grinned. "I think after the competition between the 2 academies tomorrow, you Eastern Academy will know your place. Lu Yang will make sure he learns to keep a low profile from now on. As for us in the Western Academy, we're the strongest. I can't wait to see that guy's face when he gets defeated," Shuedong sneered. "But before that, I think I'll take care of you Eastern Academy trash first." Mu Yuan interlocked his fingers and cracked them loudly before walking menacingly towards Su Ling and the others. Seeing that Mu Yuan wasn't backing down, Su Ling's face turned pale, but then he gritted his teeth and said, "Let's fight him. Let's fight." The other boys, filled with bloodlust, were unwilling to back down in front of so many onlookers. A group of people who haven't even reached the spirit movement stage dare to lay a hand on me? Truly overestimating themselves. Mu Chen saw this and sneered, his palms tightening as faint spiritual energy began to rise. Boom! With a heavy stomp of his foot, his figure shot forward like an arrow, effortlessly leaping over several incoming figures. In an instant, he appeared before Su Ling, who wore an expression of panic. With a cold sneer, Mu Chen threw a powerful punch, the wind from his fist whistling sharply as it aimed at Su Ling's face. Su Ling stared at the rapidly approaching fist, unable to react in time. He could only watch as the fist grew larger in his vision. Then, as if resigned to his fate, he closed his eyes, thinking to himself, "Looks like I'll be lying down for a few days." Just as he shut his eyes, he seemed to hear some startled exclamations around him, followed by a muffled sound in front of him. A gust of air slammed into his face, making it tremble slightly. To his surprise, the pain he had anticipated never came. He hesitantly opened his eyes a crack, only to freeze. A pale, slender hand, appearing from behind him, had effortlessly blocked the forceful punch from Mu Chen. Su Ling quickly turned his head, and there he saw the familiar figure of a slim young man with a reassuring smile. "Brother Mu," Su Ling exclaimed with great joy. "Well done. You didn't disgrace our Eastern Academy." Mu Chen smiled faintly at him. Then, he turned to look at Mu Yuan, who appeared a bit unsettled, along with the other two, Mayan and Shuedong. "Their confidence is from me. Do you have any objections?" Mu Yuan's eyes narrowed as he looked at the boy with his arms crossed. His expression was impassive, but his words carried a hint of icy detachment. "After watching for so long, are you finally unable to resist stepping out?" Upon seeing Lu Yang, Mu Yuan and Shuedong both showed expressions of joy, quickly calling out to him, "Lu Ge." Their gazes toward Mu Chen now held a hint of arrogance and malice. Although Mu Chen had a strong reputation in the Earth class and had previously defeated the three of them, they knew full well that Mu Chen was still no match for Lu Yang, the top student of the Earth class. With Lu Yang backing them, they were no longer afraid of Mu Chen. Lu Yang looked at the disheveled Mu Yuan and his companions, frowning slightly. His gaze turned cold as he fixed it on Mu Chen. "Mu Chen, I think you owe us an explanation for today's incident." "Explanation?" Mu Chen looked at Lu Yang, the most famous student of the Western Academy's Earth class, and smiled. "They attacked our Eastern Academy members without cause. I think it's you who should be giving the explanation." The students surrounding them couldn't help but grin at the escalating tension. These two were now the most outstanding in the Earth class. Originally, everyone thought the clash between them would only occur tomorrow, but to their surprise, it was happening right here, right now. Lu Yang narrowed his eyes, his expression turning colder. Within the Earth class, no one dared speak to him so arrogantly. Although he had heard some things about Mu Chen, he was still the undisputed number one. "How arrogant," Lu Yang said, his lips curling into a mocking smile. "I'm really curious. Someone who only got their qualification for the Spirit Road by sheer luck, then was forcefully kicked out. Where do you get this kind of arrogance from?" Su Ling and the others felt a surge of anger at Lu Yang's harsh words, but they knew Lu Yang was someone they couldn't take on. They could only grit their teeth in frustration. Wondering whether it was luck? "Why don't you try it and find out?" Mu Chen said lightly, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. Lu Yang's pupils contracted. Clearly, he hadn't expected Mu Chen to speak to him in such a manner. His voice grew colder. "I had planned to wait until tomorrow's two academies competition to settle things with you. But since you're being so difficult, I'll just deal with you now and save tomorrow's time." As soon as the words left his mouth, Lu Yang took a step forward, his arms rising as spiritual energy surged around them, more concentrated and intense than Mu Chen's. Su Ling and the others were shocked at the overwhelming pressure Lu Yang exuded. Was he planning to make his move right here and now? They looked anxiously at Mu Chen, only to find that the youthful face, one similar to their own, held no trace of fear. His dark eyes reflected a faint black light, impenetrable and unfathomable. Seeing Mu Chen's calm demeanor, Su Ling and the others felt their anxiety ease slightly, only to be replaced by renewed hope. Lu Yang may be the top of the Earth class, but Mu Chen wasn't someone to be underestimated. Perhaps dealing with him wouldn't be as easy as Lu Yang thought. Truly a shameless guy. Mu Chen shook his head, his lips pressing together. The once bright and youthful face, adorned with a carefree smile, now carried a glint of cold sharpness. With a slight twist of his palm, dark spiritual energy flowed quietly at his fingertips. The tension between the two escalated, the air thick with hostility. Many students around them couldn't help but widen their eyes. These two were the strongest among the Earth class, and everyone was eager to see who would come out on top in a clash between them. "Stop!" Just as the confrontation was about to erupt, a stern voice rang out from the distance. A sharp gust of wind followed, and in the blink of an eye, a robust figure appeared between them. "Teacher Mo." The surrounding students were startled for a moment before quickly greeting the newcomer with respect. The man known as Teacher Mo appeared to be in his middle years, his features resolute. Within his body, an astonishing fluctuation of spiritual energy could be faintly sensed, exerting a subtle yet undeniable pressure on the nearby students. Even Lu Yang, normally proud and defiant, restrained his arrogance. The man before him was a genuine divine soul stage powerhouse, an elite figure even within the northern spirit realm. He was not someone Liu Yang could afford to offend. If you want to spar, do it at the combat platform, making a spectacle of yourselves out here. Are you looking for punishment? Teacher Mo's gaze swept around as he spoke in a deep voice. Haha, Teacher Mo, you misunderstand. We were merely exchanging pointers, Liu Yang chuckled, knowing that there was no chance of a fight today. He turned to Mu Chen and pointed a finger at him with a faint smirk. Tomorrow, at the 2 academies competition, I'll be waiting for you. With that, Liu Yang turned and left with his followers. His departing words still lingered in the air, murmured just loudly enough to be heard. Just a guy who got kicked out of the spirit road halfway through? Su Ling and the others heard Liu Yang's deliberate remark, and their faces darkened. Gritting his teeth, Su Ling muttered, Mu bro, that bastard is too arrogant. At least you qualified for the spirit road. Who does he think he is? Mu Chen couldn't help but chuckle at Su Ling's indignant expression. Patting him on the shoulder, he said, Why get so worked up? If a dog bites you, do you bite back? It's just so infuriating. Yeah, it is a little. Mu Chen's lips curled into a faint smile, but his youthful face gradually took on a cold edge. I might not bite back, but I do prefer to smack them down in one blow. So hard they won't dare to yap again. That Liu brat. He really is just like his father. Teacher Mo watched Liu Yang's departing figure, his brows furrowing slightly in apparent displeasure. He then turned to Mu Chen and grinned. Well said. I like your style. But I hear that Liu Yang has already reached the initial spirit movement stage, and with his mortal grade spiritual vein, he's practically on par with a mid-spirit movement stage fighter. Are you certain you won't lose in tomorrow's competition? Don't worry, Teacher Mo. I won't embarrass you. Mu Chen smiled. Teacher Mo oversaw the Eastern Academy, and if they were to suffer a crushing defeat in the competition, it wouldn't reflect well on him either. We'll head back first, Teacher Mo. Teacher Mo watched as Mu Chen and his group gradually disappeared into the distance, clicking his tongue in thought. This kid, he's young, but you can never quite see through him. There's none of the usual arrogance of youth, yet beneath that calm exterior, there's a hidden sharpness. No wonder he managed to stir up such chaos in the spirit road. If he had completed his spirit path trials, the 5 great academies would have been all over him. He wouldn't still be here. Teacher Mo sighed, a hint of anticipation flashing in his eyes. Tomorrow's competition, Liu Yang had prepared well, but in this duel between the top rankers of the Earth class, who would have the last laugh? As night deepened, Mu Chen sat cross-legged in his room, hands forming seals as he entered a meditative state. Around him, the surrounding spiritual energy stirred slightly, flowing into his body with each steady breath. As more and more spiritual energy entered, a faint, dark glow began to surface on his skin. Within his chi-si, the dark spiritual energy surged, its intensity several times greater than when he had first begun training. Clearly, his recent cultivation efforts had paid off. Threads of spiritual energy followed the training path of the great pagoda art, eventually transforming into dark spiritual energy that merged into his chi-si, making his power grow even more formidable. By now, Mu Chen had grown increasingly adept at the great pagoda art, though he had yet to reach the foundation establishment level. Mu Chen remained calm and composed, quietly gathering the spiritual energy that had been infused into his chi-si. Just as he absorbed the final bit of spiritual power, he suddenly felt a slight tremor within his chi-si. To his surprise, the dark spiritual energy swirling inside his chi-si began to expand at an astonishing speed, a sense of overwhelming power rippling through his limbs and bones. Mu Chen was momentarily stunned by the sudden change in his chi-si. After a brief pause, he couldn't help but let out a light laugh.